Hey everybody! We are live and rolling on yet another weekly live Q&A. Live Aquatics Q&A with everyone's favorite aquatics enthusiast and video host, Thomas.
Hi.
And Brian, the video producer. But most importantly, Thomas, the guy who's here to answer your actual questions. How you doing?
I'm good. Doing good.
Kind of cheesed with you still.
Who?
I didn't tell you this before the stream started. I'm cheesed with you.
Why?
Well,
of course he's going to wait until we're on camera to confront me.
I figured...
Because now I have to behave.
Yeah, there's witnesses here now. So, ages ago, a month ago, well, that's not ages, a month ago, more or less, you told me you were bringing donuts, homemade donuts. Then you forgot all the donuts, and I'm kind of still waiting for more donuts.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that. Just yesterday, Eva was saying, we should make donuts again.
Eva is
my wife. And I was like, yeah, we should.
Eva,
I wasn't thinking about you at all. I was just thinking about eating more donuts. But that's a solid point. So my response to you is we should have some donuts probably for next week.
Eva, if you're watching, please don't let him forget. Put him by the door, buy his boots, make sure he brings them with him because I've been craving them for weeks now.
It's totally not. Totally not her fault. In fact, I think I was already out the driveway and down the street, and she probably texted me. It's like, you forgot the donuts. And I'm like, I'm not turning around. I already had some donuts. I'm so sorry. Anyways,
it's my reality. Anyway, enough about donuts. Next week we'll have donuts.
I'll bring you donuts, Brian. Don't worry.
Thanks. Cool. I'm still cheesed until then. Yeah. Let's start with the questions. Hi, everybody. We're so happy to have all of you here joining us today. We're going to get to as many questions as we can. I will say off the top that any questions you have specifically about your specific fish and something happening very specifically about your fish, we will try our best to help you. But it's always best for those cases to email our support team at head office, sending them photos and some context of what's been going on, and they can help you much more effectively than I think we can here. But again, we will try our best to give you any advice we can. That said, what other notes do I have? Make sure you'll hit the like button.
Yes.
If you're just getting here, hit that like button, smash it. That helps us out a lot. Make sure you share the stream, share our channel, share everything, because that helps us grow. And the more we grow, the more videos we can do. And the more videos we do, the happier we all are. So that's that. Next up, what else do I have? React series. We have a React video that came out end of last week. If you haven't seen it yet, check that out. I'll link it for you.
A puppy's in that one.
A puppy's in that one too. A very cute puppy, which is no longer a puppy at this point.
Nope.
But that said, we've had a ton of people asking us, where do I send photos? It's always in the description, the email address, but I'll link it here as well so you can send photos of your aquarium, and Thomas can give you his impressions and advice and tips and
absolutely
general praise.
And I know they've been mostly freshwater up to this point, but some people have pointed out or have asked in the past why we don't do saltwater, and it's just send us saltwater stuff. I think the first bulk of the photos that we were doing were a call to action that Brian made for low-tech planet tanks that we could include in our low-tech planet series so people could see real-life examples of what people are doing for low-tech tanks. But we want to see everything. It's not just freshwater specific.
No,
I would love to see anything and everything. Axolotls, anything, turtles, I don't care.
Yeah, send them all in.
Send me all your tanks.
And we'll react to them. We have so many submissions already, but we want more because it's going to be an ongoing series. And again, we've had such a good response. So with that out of the way, let's get to the reason we're all here, the Q&A.
Yay!
We've got your Q's, and we will give you some A's. First question, can I use a SodaStream machine to carbonate pure water with accurate measurement of CO2 and add a portion of it to the aquarium daily instead of injecting CO2?
Solid question. I don't have any hands-on experience with SodaStream. I think my brother has one, and he likes to carbonate his drinks with it. Not that helps you at all.
Should I call him and say
I guess, yeah. Hey, Jonathan. No, so here's the thing. I don't know the SodaStream machine well enough to be able to say whether or not it's going to do an accurate enough job or give you a way of measuring the amount of CO2 you're putting into water that you're then adding to your aquarium. I have heard of people using more or less soda water, just carbonated water, to try to add CO2 to their aquarium. I don't know how efficient that is. I haven't personally done it. I've injected CO2. So I don't know what the price of a SodaStream machine is. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it probably has replaceable CO2 canisters rather than a refillable one. I could be wrong. However, there are lots of inexpensive compressed CO2 kits you can get for your aquarium that will do a honestly, in my opinion, do a better job of injecting CO2 at regular intervals or on a constant to keep your CO2 level right where you need it, rather than trying to hand dose CO2 that's being dissolved into another liquid first. And then, yeah, I wouldn't do it, but that's because I like to have complete control of everything I'm doing. And I really like stability. Stability for me is very important. So if I can inject CO2 constantly all day, have a solenoid, shut it off at night, make sure my CO2 level stays in the same place, whether or not I'm using a pH controller or something like that, or just doing it with a drop checker, I feel that is a better way of doing it because the results in the past have spoken volumes.
Yeah, and just limit the guesswork altogether.
Yeah, I don't like guesswork, and I like things to be stable. Plants like stability, fish like stability, corals like stability. If you can keep everything at a constant, then you're usually going to end up with better results.
Yeah. And it's always fun to experiment. So, I mean, you could always give it a try, I guess, and see how it works and let us know. But the less guesswork, the better, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is probably possible. Just I don't have any experience with the SodaStream, and I probably wouldn't do it that way anyways.
I've always wanted a SodaStream, though.
Yeah, it's not... Even Eva has brought up SodaStream.
Yeah, like I've wanted to try it. I don't know if it's worth the money anyway.
My brother really likes his. That's what I'll say.
Yeah?
He carbonates everything.
Ah, cool.
Carbonated coffee. I'm just kidding. I have no idea about the coffee. Anyways, cool. Next question.
Next question. Set up a 5-gallon quarantine for some new autos.
Okay.
Food options while in quarantine. So do you want to
Otocinclus?
Question? But there's a few questions here, so maybe we'll start with food options.
For autos, I would probably do a sinking algae wafer for autos. There's lots of different types. Hikari's a great brand. Tropical is a great brand. I've used both of those and they work very well. You could probably also, I don't know if autos will take to cucumber like plecos do, but that's another option. Slice a cucumber. The thing with using slices of cucumber and stuff like that is you want a more well-rounded diet too. So mix that in with something like an algae wafer that's going to have more nutrition to it than just cucumber, which is like 1 billion% water. That's a fact.
Cucumber is one of my least favorite things, by the way. Anything
cucumbers.
cucumber just disgusts me. It repels me. Would not be good food for me. You would not be happy.
But that's what I would probably do.
Cool. Next, the next
and good on you for quarantining your fish.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Next part of this question is how to prep and how long to leave in the tank before replacing, and how often for water changes. New to quarantine.
For quarantine? How long to prep? Okay, so when you're setting up a quarantine tank, which we have a video on.
Yes, I'll link it.
One of the best ways to set up a quarantine tank is to use media from your existing aquarium. So take some of the biomedia out of your filter, a small portion of it, and use that to seed the quarantine tank. Run it for, I usually like doing a couple of weeks. It makes sure everything is stable. It should help, get the filter started. You can use water from the aquarium as well. I can't even talk today. Use water from the aquarium as well to fill the quarantine tank. Usually, like if you've got, let's say, a 55-gallon tank of fish, you have a 10-gallon quarantine. Take 10 gallons from your 55, put that into the 10-gallon tank, and then some of the media as well, and that's going to give the tank a really good starting point. Also, make sure that you're adding some sort of hardscape. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could literally be clay pots or single ornaments or rocks or whatever, so that your fish have a place to hide and feel comfortable while they're in quarantine. You don't necessarily need gravel or anything, because that way you can see what they're pooping, how they're pooping, make sure that they're all clear of any bad parasites. You'll see if there's any leftover food and stuff like that quite easily. But 2 weeks of setting up that quarantine tank and making sure that it's cycling. You can even add a little bit of food just to make sure the bacteria is growing and got something to munch on while you wait for your autos to go in there after the 2-week mark. Just make sure you test your water too. Just like your main aquarium, you got to treat your quarantine like a brand new setup and make sure it's doing well before you stick those fish in.
And I'll link that quarantine video actually in a second.
Oh, and doing water changes on quarantine, literally just watch the parameters and do water changes as often as needed. So it's going to be the same as any other aquarium. You want to keep your nitrates nice and low. You want to make sure you have zero ammonia. You want to make sure your pH and temperature are stable, because a quarantine tank is essentially just like your main system. It's just separate of it. So you're taking care of it just like you take care of a regular aquarium.
Awesome. Yes, I will link that for you in a second. Next, I'm on my 7th week cycling my first saltwater tank. As of 2 days ago, my parameters are ammonia 2 to 5, nitrite 3, and nitrate 30. I've been told to do a water change, and I've been told not to do one. What do I do?
7th week cycling. Did you use live rock? Because if you used live rock, there's usually, especially if it was pretty fresh, there's a fair amount of decay that happens that will cause your ammonia probably to float for a while. So a lot of people will cycle a saltwater tank for a couple of months, which you're almost coming up on. But it all depends on, the bio load of the aquarium. And if you have live rock that's fresh from the ocean, cultured or otherwise, you're going to have a lot of stuff on the outside of that rock that is probably going to die off at first and create a lot of excess nutrients in the tank.
You use dry rock, he says.
You use dry rock. I don't know what you did then. But, was it quarry rock, like mined rock, or was it like Tonga rock that was dried?
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, let me know. Long story short, though, like I've used Marco rock, for instance, and I had a Livebearer algae outbreak. That lasted probably 3 or 4 weeks of me just pulling out gigantic clumps of Livebearer algae and putting in cleanup crew.
I have no clue what rock. It's white.
Well, all dry rock is essentially going to be white when you start off. Rock from the quarry, like quarried rock, is from the ground, and then they acid bathe it to kind of bring back the porousness of the rock. Whereas if you get like Tonga branch that's dry, or pick a region, rock from that region that's been dried in the sun or something, you can still have quite a bit of organics on it, although they do usually wash it as well and sometimes give it an acid bath. But just hang tight. Do you have a skimmer on the tank? If you do, that'll help pull out any organics in the water that are making it more difficult for your tank to complete cycling. You have nitrates, so the good news there is your cycle is at least partially complete. Yeah, usually I'll consider a cycle over once you start getting green algae, which usually happens post ammonia spike. I would give it at least 2 more weeks. Try not to do any water changes, but don't add any food or anything to the aquarium right now if you're still reading ammonia, because what you want to see is that ammonia that's left in the water help build that bacterial colony that you've got and have that convert over to nitrate. Then your cycle's over. So if you're still adding something to fuel it, I would quit doing that. Give it at least a couple weeks. If you're still stuck in this position, let us know.
Yeah, he says he doesn't have a skimmer.
No skimmer? Putting a skimmer in the tank might help speed that along just a little bit. So any extra organics that are still there, your skimmer would help pull out. You shouldn't really have any because you use dried rock. But, c'est la vie.
Cool. Before we move on, I just want to mention we do have our other Aquatics Enthusiast and video host Josh in the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's under the Big Al's flag there. He's answering other questions, some of the same questions. So you guys get double the help today from our Aquatics Enthusiasts. So anything we might not get to, hopefully Josh can do that. Hi, Josh. Good to see you. Good to have you here. Next up, Josh, you little happy faces. Okay, next. My gourami fish is always eating the flake food, but spits back out. What should I do? The other gouramis are eating properly.
Tasting and not enjoying fully. Is your gourami eating anything else? So what usually happens if a fish is taking in food and then spitting it back out, your fish is hungry and it's trying to eat things, but it's not finding them palatable. That's usually what the problem is. I've also seen it in fish that have a tongue parasite, which doesn't really happen very often. I've only seen it in saltwater and one time where the fish was trying to eat but couldn't because there was a thing sitting on its tongue taking up 90% of its mouth.
Oof. Thanks.
But that's probably not what's happening here. Your gourami might just not find the food you are currently feeding palatable. There are ways around that. If you want to keep feeding flake food and want to try to entice your gourami to eat it, there are various food additives you can try putting onto the food. Seachem makes one called Entice. People use it in saltwater a lot for fish that are much more finicky, to try to get them to eat the food that they are being presented. You can also try just feeding something else. Try frozen bloodworms or freeze-dried bloodworms. You could try brine shrimp. You can try, all kinds of things that are similar to what they would naturally be eating, or at least more so that they're more likely to find it palatable. And then you can slowly try to move them over to something else that you would prefer to feed them or get them to eat as well. As long as your gourami is acting and behaving normal otherwise, I wouldn't suspect it is something that's wrong with them, other than, like I mentioned, they just don't like what you're giving them. So try something else and see if it eats. And if it doesn't, let us know.
Yeah. Next up, this is not a question. I just wanted to read it because it gives me the warm and fuzzies. I'm so excited to be able to catch this live. We are gearing up to starting our first tank, a low-tech planet tank, inspired by the series.
Yay!
That's awesome.
I can't wait to see what you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much. Send photos.
Yes.
To our React series. We can react to it. It'll be really, 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 really cool. Next up, hey guys, just wanted to know if there are any tank mates for African cichlids.
Yeah. One of my favorite tank mates for Africans is catfish. So Petricola, Multipunctatus. These are all Cynodontis species. Angelicus. I love them. They're great. They're a lot of fun. They hide a lot, especially when you first get them. But you will find that as you feed in the aquarium, they will come out of hiding and zoom around like little vacuum sharks and get up all the sinky food.
Photoshop challenge. Vacuum sharks. I want to see. Send me, Brian@BigAls.com. You guys send me your Photoshop vacuum sharks. I want to see it. Let's see what's next here. Have you ever heard of brown or a rust looking algae in your tank, and do you know what it's caused from? I have a 10-gallon column tank, both with identical setups and fish. Only one has that algae.
A rusty colored algae.
Brown or rust looking.
Maybe some kind of dinoflagellate, or I would think it's maybe dinos.
What was the one that Josh did a video on how to get rid of this? Is like the red
cyanobacteria?
Maybe. It was kind of red.
It's not usually in freshwater. Cyanobacteria is usually blue-green.
Oh, okay.
In saltwater, it's often maroon colored or red.
Gotcha.
Although you can also get blue and green in saltwater, and I'm sure you could probably get brown and red in fresh. But I would think it's probably dinoflagellate, or there's something else and I can't think of it. When I think of the algae, I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll circle back to this one, and it'll come to him at some point. Maybe it'll be at 3 a.m, and he'll wake up out of bed and go, and then we'll have to jump back on here at 3 a.m.
Yeah, what I would do to start off with is test the water in both tanks and see if there's any difference in the water chemistry between the two tanks. And that would be a pretty good place to start to see why one may have algae. Diatoms.
Sorry, Josh.
Thank you.
That's Josh answering. Josh, thanks. I wasn't watching the stream close enough, I guess.
Yeah, see.
He started yelling it at me. He said,
Diatoms! Diatoms!
I imagine him shaking his monitor. Diatoms!
Yes. Thank you, Josh. That's the brain fart word I was thinking of. So, diatom algae. Diatoms or dinoflagellate.
Cool.
Those would be my actual guesses.
We got that.
That's awesome.
Can I have a pearl gourami with my 2 dwarf gourami? Also, the male bites the female a lot. Should I put her in another tank? She has some marks on her. That's from Madeline Anderson, who is here like every single week live with us.
I know. She's
so thank
awesome.
you so much for coming in, asking questions, and she's always encouraging people to like it.
142 gallon. How is that dwarf gourami constantly finding the female? Yeah, if he's pretty insistent on chasing her around and nipping at her, it's going to be tough to get him to stop without just separating them. So you're on the right track there. Anytime I've got, if in the aquarium having a lot of places to hide and visual barriers and stuff and lots of plants or hardscape isn't working to keep 2 fish apart, your only real option at that point is to get rid of one. Because obviously they've decided that they are not stopping. Yeah. Can you put a pearl gourami in with them? I've seen people mix all kinds of gouramis together. I've personally been of the camp of I try to stick to similarly sized fish of the same species, especially if there's any chance of them not getting along. But I would think if you have, and I can't sex gouramis personally, but if you had a group of females, you'd probably be more likely to get them to get along than if you have males and females mixed together, because males are insistent when they decide that they want to do their procreation thing. And that makes them difficult to deal with. Or you could have all males. That's the other option, but they might have their own disputes. Usually not as bad as one just like if you have a few, you won't just have one chasing one other one around all day long unless they're the only two in there. So yeah, you can definitely try mixing gouramis together, just not giant gouramis with the other ones. They get really big, like 2 feet. They had one at, they probably still do, at the Toronto Zoo. Yeah. And I used to just like pet that thing on the head. Not supposed to touch them. Wow. They're really cool. Anyways, I digress.
Speaking of, speaking of big, by the way, I just wanted to show this. We're not going to do what did Brian learn this week. We're just going to do all questions this week. But I did want to quickly show, I sent this to you last night actually, and you mentioned really big fish. So last night my wife and I and our kids went out to eat, and the restaurant had some display tanks of fish, and I ran into this guy almost literally, and he was huge. And we've had, like at the office, Chi and you guys all had flower horns. Chi had a fairly big flower horn, and that thing was like having a puppy. Like that thing was pretty interactive and it was pretty impressive. But this thing is like twice or maybe 3 times the size. This thing was, you can't tell for sure. Like I'm a little closer to the camera than the fish is. This thing was as big as my head.
Oh yeah,
I could not believe how big.
And he has got a huge head bubble.
Yeah, look at that thing. I didn't know they got that big. Like I saw cheese and saw yours, but how big do these guys usually get?
It depends on. Okay, so flower horns are usually mixes of different types of cichlids, often having the same type of cichlid across all of them. Yeah. But they're hybrids essentially. So depending on the mix or the hybridized mix that's in there, it could get much larger or it could stay much smaller. There's one that's mixed with a parrot cichlid, and they stay pretty small. And I can't remember what they're called, but she would remember, and Josh might even remember. But the interesting thing about that particular one you're looking at is it has a really huge head ornament. Yeah. I've seen some that are comically large. That's approaching comically large. I've seen some that are bigger than that, believe it or not. Just pictures on Google and stuff, but could even be photoshopped.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and just because you mentioned
but
big
no,
fish,
that's awesome. Yeah, that has a much bigger one than Cheese had.
Yeah. It's and there's another smaller flower horn there, but like the I didn't get a photo of it unfortunately. The patterning, it was like a lot of like almost gold color. All of it was amazing, really pretty fish. I just want to also show, my kid and this fish decided to ham it up for the camera a little bit as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're both checking out the camera, smiling for the photo. That's my kid's fake smile. When I tell him to smile for photos, that's what he does. He's a ham like his dad.
Looks like the smartest fish on the planet. I am going to take over the world.
Mega mind of fish.
Yeah, seriously.
Anyway, cool. I just wanted to show that was something cool last night. I saw that. I thought I'd share with everyone. I was also on our community tab, so make sure you guys check out our community tab. There's some behind the scenes stuff. Every time Thomas or I have like cool stuff we want to show off, it's on our community tab. So check that out. But in the meantime, let's get back to the cues. I want to start a 10-gallon Nano reef. What is the best way to start with it? What gear should I purchase as a beginner to saltwater?
10-gallon reef. Okay, so as somebody new to saltwater, I will first start off by saying 10 gallons is a more challenging size to start with, just due to dilution. The larger you go, the smaller a mistake that you make becomes due to the volume of water diluting said mistake. Also, there aren't a ton of reef fish that are going to be appropriate for a 10-gallon tank. So you're limiting yourself to smaller species of goby and stuff like that. So as long as you're okay with that, and invertebrates. The nice thing is shrimp don't really care too much about how much space they have in relation to themselves, but they can get aggressive with each other if there isn't enough space. But there's tons of really cool small shrimp and micro reef fish, mostly, again, gobies. So that is a limiting factor of a 10-gallon. Moving forward, what you really need to start off is a filter. It doesn't have to be anything crazy fancy. You could even use like an Aqua Clear 20 on a 10-gallon tank, and that'll be a pretty decent start for a filter. And you need a heater to make sure your temp stays nice and stable, and a light, especially if you plan on keeping corals, which I believe is reef, right? 10-gallon reef tank. Indeed. So you're going to need a decent light. Now, because the tank is so shallow, you don't have to go crazy. You could do a 2-bulb T5, and you're going to get away with that, no problem, just because the tank is pretty short. Unless you're going to go for some seriously crazy highlight acropora or something, you're going to be in great shape. If you wanted to go with an LED fixture, the Current USA IC orbit lights are fantastic, and you can get a nice small one for a 10-gallon tank, and it's going to do a really great job. It's going to give you good coverage. So yeah, that's really all you need in terms of equipment, and the rest is just water changes. So you're going to want some salt. You're going to want a nice, you could even avoid a 2-part additive. If you're willing to do like a 5-gallon, 50% water change weekly, you probably don't even have to put additives in the water, especially if you're only doing soft corals. But you're going to want a decent way to measure salt. So I'd avoid using like a dip hygrometer and instead use a refractometer, which Josh and I are huge advocates of. Refractometers are great.
I met a marine biologist here in the new city in Halifax, where we live now, and I just digress very quickly. And he didn't know I work in the aquatics industry, but we're at a party and he's talking about part of his job to a group of people, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you measure the salt level using something that looks like a little lightsaber."
Yeah, it does.
Refractometer.
Yeah,
yeah, it does. It looks just like a little lightsaber. It does,
except for you look through the end of it, and if any Jedi in any Star Wars movie held up his lightsaber and went, "Huh!" He'd get fired from the Jedi Council.
Not to take off track.
But yeah, just have a really decent measuring tool like a refractometer, which almost any one of them is going to do a pretty good job. We carry a couple that are great, actually, and that's it. All you have to do is measure salt water. And that's really the only difference, the measuring of salt in the water to keeping, a 10-gallon reef from a 10-gallon freshwater tank, that and obviously the inhabitants and what you're going to be lighting the tank with. We are going to be getting more in-depth with a series that'll probably, although be larger than a 10-gallon, will help you understand a lot more of these concepts, probably a lot easier than me trying to explain it without any visuals right now. So sit tight for that. And if you have any more questions, hit up our support team. Yeah. They're all great guys. Josh is a saltwater nut. That's my fault. He didn't have saltwater, and then I gave him a tank one time, and now he's a coral addict. Yeah. So if you want to keep the conversation going and ask more, Josh is definitely the guy you could talk to.
Yeah, for sure.
He was my Padawan learner, and now he's
Maybe around the holidays, Josh, if you're still hanging around, maybe around the holidays, I'm flying home, and maybe I'll come into the office and we can do a live, like a specific like coral and saltwater live stream or something.
That'd be really cool.
We'll think about that. And everyone, if you think that's a good idea, let us know here, and we'll try and arrange that.
Not that I'm trying to push off coral stuff.
No,
I'm obsessed with saltwater. That's like my forte. But anyways, keep going.
Cool. The Nutty Mechanic says, "Can't wait for my new Star Wars tank to be up to show it to the world."
Yes.
I even found a way to use a sponge filter as a decoration.
Nice.
You guys are awesome.
I can't wait to see that. Please send all the pictures.
Yeah, emails brian@bigals.com. I'll put it again here in the chat. Send us photos once it's done. We'll definitely want to feature that in our React series. So thanks again, the Nutty Mechanic. Appreciate that, man. Looking forward to it. I'm planning on getting the Fluval Sea Evo 13.5, and I want to get a pair of clownfish, and I want to know what the best beginner soft corals for a nano reef. Again, Josh has a video series. We did a video series on the Fluval Sea, which you may or may not have watched. I'll link that. And again, Josh, if you're here, maybe you can also, if you haven't already, give Sport Vids here some ideas for coral. What are your thoughts?
13.5 gallons is pretty small for a pair of clownfish. I can't think of a species that'll stay small enough to stay in that tank their whole life. The minimum is about 20 gallons. So it actually probably, unless you plan to upgrade in the near future, like in the next 8 months to a year, I would probably avoid the clownfish, or at least a pair. You could do like one clown and some other smaller reef fish, and it'll be a lot easier on the whole system. But yeah. And what was was there another part to that question?
Just one of the best beginner
soft corals. Oh man. Okay, so if you're really into collecting things, zoanthids are a lot of fun to collect. Same with Paleothoa polyps. You just have to be careful when you handle them. What else? Nephthia, like Palau Nephthia. Pick any soft coral that's photosynthetic, and it's pretty easy. Star polyps are really, really, really easy. You could do toadstool leathers, come in all kinds of different colors these days. Some really cool ones, like the Tyree toadstool is like a pink color with bright green polyps, which is really nice. What else would I recommend? If you want to try a hard coral that's easier. I would go with like Montipora digitata or Montipora capricornis. They're both really cool SPS corals that are pretty forgiving. And for LPS, Euphyllias can be pretty forgiving. I find things like octobubbles and frog spawns and hammer corals, especially the branching varieties, to be a pretty good coral to start with if you want to start with corals that have a calcium skeleton. So LPS wise, they're pretty good starters. Acanthostria are actually pretty hardy too. A little bit more on the pricey side, but acans, I think, have a definite place in every reef. They are just a awesome brain type coral. They feed easily and they are colorful.
Cool. But any other questions? Again, Josh, if you have anything to add there, obviously your input is hugely valuable, especially because you have that series, and if you haven't seen that series, I'll link it, by the way, guys. Pretty cool little series. Next up, your dog is the cutest little thing ever.
He's not little anymore. I weighed him last night. He is 6 months old and 85 pounds. He is going to outweigh me at this point.
Yeah.
Not that hard to do, really.
A stiff breeze blows you away.
Oh, doesn't it just?
My freshwater tank is having problems with my guppies and fin rot.
Yikes.
Other fish are fine. Water parameters are good, but my KH and GH are very low as I have soft water. My pH is stable at 7.4. What can I do?
You could try quarantining all the fish that have fin rot and treating them for fin rot with a medication. And once the fin rot is gone and they're doing better, move them back into the main tank. If it's just like guppies that are being affected by it, just get rid of them, put them on their own, treat them for what the problem is, and try reintroducing them afterwards. I don't see a reason why with those water parameters your guppy should be getting fin rot. That really sucks. Yeah. And I'm sorry to hear that. If you want to dive a little bit further into it, hit up our support team, yes. Send them pictures, and we'll make sure everything's diagnosed as best as possible and see if we can get you on the right track to sorting out the fin rot issues that you're having.
That's right. Next up, I have a female red-humped earth eater about 1.5 inches long.
Nice.
I think she is holding eggs in her mouth for a little over a week. When can I expect to see babies? Tips on growing them out in the same tank.
No idea how soon you can expect to see babies. I will say that I absolutely love those fish. Geophagus are awesome. I honestly couldn't tell you because I've never bred Geophagus and I haven't really looked into it. So I don't want to misguide you in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a Googling the information situation. Sorry, I couldn't give you more info on that.
Yeah, again, Josh, if you have anything, but best to email our support team regardless.
Oh yeah.
Okay, next up, I have an Undergravel filter. I have always used one, but is it totally necessary? I'm getting tired of seeing the tubes. Thanks.
Not necessary at all in this day and age. So Undergravel was a lot more prevalent before we had like hang-on power filters and stuff, and essentially what it did was it helped to utilize your gravel bed for biological filtration and brought water flow through the gravel bed and trapped the dirt underneath it and gave you a way of accessing it for filtration rather than just having a stagnant gravel bed. So not many people use Undergravel anymore. Some still do. I don't really recommend it at this point because a good canister filter or hang-on power filter is going to do as well. Or better in a lot of cases. A canister filter will beat an Undergravel way to death. Mostly because media these days is a lot better. So the porosity of your gravel versus the porosity of a specific biological media designed to have an insane amount of surface area in a very small package, it's leaps and bounds ahead. Like your gravel will never compare to the biological media you stick in a filter these days.
Can you talk about African dwarf frogs a little? Are they fully aquatic?
African dwarf frogs are fully aquatic. They spend like their entire life basically in water. I don't even think they ever really come out. I think they spend their entire lives underwater. They're a lot of fun. They're very easy to keep. Yeah. I found I've always had the best luck feeding them frozen foods, just in terms of getting them to eat and eat consistently and eat well. But a lot of people also have pretty easy time getting them on sinking pellets as long as they're very, very small.
My female dwarf Gourami is so fat now. She's 100%. She 100% has eggs in her belly, but she won't mate with the male. Can I do something to help her? She's huge now, and I'm starting to panic. I'd say first off, light a few candles.
Berry Manilow?
Berry White.
Oh.
Berry Manilow works too. Berry White, though, is the deep one. But it's a little dated. Maybe even some Drake. You know what I mean? Like if there is
Drake?
Yeah. There's a couple Drake songs I think could set the mood. I don't know. I'm just laying some suggestions out there. This is just from my point of view. I'm not an aquatics expert. What music do fish like to mate to?
Spice Girls.
Nice. Try it out. They got
Metallica.
Yeah.
Opposite ends of the spectrum. You can't really make her want to mate with the male. I found certain species. I haven't bred Gourami, so I can't really give you firsthand experience with Gouramis. But certain species will really need more than one option in order to want to mate. This has been quite true, actually, in breeding dart frogs in some cases. The competition that happens when you have more than one male in a tank. The males will color up, they'll show off with each other, they'll spar with each other. Sometimes seeing that visually and having that competition in the aquarium is what entices the females to actually want to follow through on breeding. I don't know if that's true specifically with Gouramis, but that could be what is happening in that case. I wouldn't really worry about her. She will probably lay her eggs whether or not she picks somebody to, fertilize them. She's got to get rid of them at some point. I don't know if Gouramis are capable of reabsorbing eggs or not, but I don't think she's going to die of being egg-laden. I haven't heard of that happening.
Hopefully not.
But yeah, if the male's obviously really onto her, but she's saying no. To the left. Everything you own in a box to the left.
We got that, who's that? Dali Vigil. This popped up in my recommendations. Never seen you guys before. Well, welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Yay, new people.
We do these Q&As and we do a lot of other video content, so check out our channel. Very happy to have you here. Next up, my red parrotfish is changing color red to black. What to do?
It's getting black spots everywhere. Huh. I don't know. I would say so here's the thing. Sometimes what happens is if some fish, I've seen this happen in red devils probably, will get dark spots of like pigment, just groups of pigment on them. It can be black spots, clownfish this happens to sometimes. It could be nothing, and it may not even be environmental, it may be genetic, and it's just going to show up, and sometimes it'll change. Sometimes it comes and it stays there and it's there forever. The other thing is it could be an actual problem. It could be a health issue. So really, in order to figure out which it actually is, we need to see a photo of it. So if you wouldn't mind, hit up our support team, send them a picture of the black spots. They're probably going to ask you if it just looks like pigmentation, if it looks raised at all, if there's any texture to it, or if it's just color underneath the scales. And we can go from there to determine exactly what it is. If it's just pigment, you can try feeding foods that have more carotenoids in them that will help bring out the reds in the fish. That may combat that. I honestly highly doubt it if it's a genetic spotting that's showing up on the fish. If it's an ailment, gotta treat that. So we'll figure it out and help you get you on the right path.
I'll put our support email address in the chat just now, so check that out and send them some photos and some info. Now, this next one, I'm going to say Chato because you've got me saying Chato. But I didn't, Calerpa, is that the right pronunciation of that word?
Chato or Calerpa, yeah.
Okay,
Calerpa.
Fantastic. Which one is better, Chato or Calerpa in Refugium with Miracle Mud?
Well, Chato is not going to benefit from Miracle Mud at all whatsoever. So that said, Calerpa will. It'll root to it and it'll utilize it to a degree. You'll find there are a lot of other ornamental algae that won't sex off like Calerpa or become poisonous like Calerpa if it releases all of its innards into the aquarium. Mermaid shaving brush would probably be all right, although it does require quite a bit of calcium. Sea turtle grass is probably a great one. If you have space for the actual plants to come out of the water from your refugium. You could do red mangroves. They need intense lighting though. But yeah, like Chlorpa will do fine. You just got to make sure you harvest it often so that it never has the opportunity to kind of release its toxins into the water. Or you could just use Chaeto and leave the miracle mud there, not for the plants, but for whatever microfauna is going to grow in your refugium.
Remember, guys, hit that like button, by the way. We still got some time on the stream, so make sure you hit that like button. Before we get to the next question, you have 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Hit it now. Okay, my aquarium water is a cloudy, milky white. The fish look healthy. Any ideas what causes it? I do water changes 50% every 5 to 6 days and change the filter regularly as well. Could it be the food I'm using?
If you have a white or milky or grayish coloration in the water, it's usually indicative of a bacterial bloom. Here's the thing. If you're changing your filter regularly and you're either rinsing it in tap water or removing the biological media when you do that, you're going to be putting your tank in a precarious position because it's going to constantly be trying to cycle. So you'd be removing a decent amount of beneficial bacteria when you change that cartridge. So if you do it too often, it can work against you. The other thing is doing large volume water changes and changing your filter at the same time, which we actually cover in the top 10 aquarium do nots, can cause the same thing because you're disrupting the bacteria to a point where you're constantly in a state of the bacteria trying to recolonize the aquarium or recolonize your biological media and surfaces within the tank. So if you're having an issue where your water's constantly cloudy, test your water. If you have low nitrates, no ammonia, no nitrite, push off that water change and filter cleaning for a little bit and test the water again. If you still have low nitrates and low nitrite, low ammonia, push it off a little bit longer. The goal being that you want that bacteria to finish colonizing the way it wants to, and that should actually help nullify or remove that cloudiness to the water. You can also try adding a bacterial additive like Seachem Stability or Big Al's Biosupport or Cycle or something to that effect to help boost that bacteria along and help that colonization happen a little bit faster. But you want to make sure that you're not disrupting that biological media in your filter. So if it is a single cartridge and everything's included within it, you'll want to add a small pouch of biomedia to your filter on top of that so that whenever you're throwing that cartridge away or removing that media and rinsing it or whatever, that you've got some biomedia in there that's stable and fully colonized. And do your best not to ever rinse biomedia in tap water that has chlorine or chloramines in it. You're best off shaking it off in a small container of aquarium water. So whenever you're doing your water changes, you can pull your cartridge out or whatever it is, shake it off in that water you've just removed from the tank, and then put it back in your filter, and that'll prevent you from killing off too much bacteria as well. And hopefully you'll get through this bacterial bloom within the next couple of weeks.
Some of my community fish have ripped fins. What could be the reason, and any suggestions to fix it?
Ripped fins can be caused by a lot of things. Sometimes it's as simple as surfaces in the aquarium that the fish are swimming by and bumping into. If you have an ornament that has sharp edges on it, or driftwood that has really fine points, something to that effect could be doing it. More commonly, ripped fins happens just from aggression within the aquarium. So I would sit on your couch or your chair, or pull one up if there isn't one nearby. At a decent distance and just watch your fish for half an hour. And if they are bullying each other, you should know pretty quick. And if that's happening, it's harder to combat because then you have the option of either changing the scape within the aquarium, adding more visual barriers, more places for fish to hide from one another, or you have to remove fish to stop the aggression from happening. But observation is key at that point. You'll find out who's doing the bullying, who's doing the nipping, and kind of move forward from there.
Cool. Alex G says, appreciate the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex G.
We really, honestly, we try very hard to bring you guys the best content we can in a timely manner and keep things interesting and fun.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun for us.
I'm really glad you guys dig it because it's a lot of fun for us. We really enjoy ourselves.
And thank you for joining us here, supporting us, all that. We really, really, really appreciate that. It's the whole reason we do this. So thank you, Alex G. Much appreciated.
Awesome.
Everyone go check out his channel. Next up, I'm thinking about getting a 20-gallon Livebearer tank. Should I get an algae eater, and what can I feed it?
20-gallon Livebearer tank. You should get an algae eater if you want to have an algae eater in your tank. So I think one thing that I've been more keen on expressing lately than I have probably previously in my aquarium career is that you have to consider that algae eaters, although they will help control algae in the aquarium, are still other aquarium inhabitants that you will have to feed. And even if they have algae to munch on a regular basis, you still want to give them a balanced diet. I'm sure they wouldn't be eating one species of algae all the time in the wild. They'd probably be grazing on many things. Often, like plecos, for instance, will often get some protein in their diet via like small worms and stuff like that they find in nymphs while they're grazing. So just keep in mind that you'll have to feed that fish a balanced diet, figure out what it's going to want to eat, and also provide more than just the algae they're eating. If you don't have algae in the tank, and you are just getting an algae eater preemptively, I would actually avoid that unless you really just want that algae eater. So for one, I really like bushy nose plecos for algae eating, especially you can get them very, very young. And for a 20-gallon tank, a bushy nose pleco is a pretty good pleco to have. So if you want a cool looking pleco, and you don't mind, adding algae wafers and stuff to the water and making sure they've got a full diet, then go ahead and get one of those. But if you're just doing it preemptively and you don't really want an algae eater, you're just like, I should get something, don't bother yet. Wait until you have a problem. You might not ever have a problem with algae. If you keep your lights to a minimum, only turn them on when you're home to enjoy it, or you've got a planted tank and the plants are up taking all the nutrients and stuff and all that, you may never run into an algae problem. So, yeah, I hope that. Yeah.
Cool. So we have more or less 50 minutes left here. Should we jump into like a lightning round? We have a ton of questions to get to. We're like halfway down.
Okay, I'll try to. I'll try to be faster.
We'll try our best. No, you're doing fine. The detail's fine. But we'll try lightning round now and just see what happens.
Okay.
Okay. Great show. Can water changes alone reverse things such as wasting disease and tail rot in my guppies?
Okay, so if what's causing those things is poor water quality, which could be messing with your fish's slime coat and making them susceptible to secondary infection, then it'll help. But I still suggest heavily putting something in the water, even if it's just Melafix or Pimafix, to help repair the damage that's caused. If it's too far gone, you'll have to medicate in some way to stop it.
Can you talk about cycling and different ways to cycle tanks in a low-tech planted in your low-tech planted series? So not here. She wants us to do a video about that in the low-tech series.
Sure.
Maybe
we'll talk about cycling and stuff. There's a couple ways that people can cycle. One of the easiest ways is to just constantly add a little bit of food to the water over the course of a week or two while you're adding a bacterial supplement. That'll help provide a food for the bacteria, like a waste for the bacteria to convert into nitrate, and that will give them food essentially so that they can colonize before there are even fish in the tank. The other option is a soft cycle using fish, which means you put fish in and you feed them very sparingly and you allow an ammonia spike to happen. It'll just be a very small ammonia spike, and it can be dangerous to the fish if you're not doing it right. So a lot of people actually avoid cycling like that and do a fishless cycle like the one I just described before.
Thomas, what's skinny disease and can I treat it? I'm in an aquarium group on Facebook and one person wrote that one of my yo-yo loach seemed to have it. I bought them yesterday. Please help.
If I knew, I feel like they're taunting me. If I knew what the, remedy was for skinny disease, do you think I'd look like this?
He's abnormally
I'm ripping
thin.
on myself.
Yeah,
I am. I'm a very thin guy, no matter what I do. So anyways,
you might have it, yeah.
Skinny disease is probably, it could be a couple of things. In saltwater, it can be being caught with cyanide, which damages the organs and can prevent fish from ever gaining weight. So they eat and just never gain weight and die. In freshwater, I've never heard of yo-yo loaches being caught with cyanide. So I'm going to assume, because I've never heard that term specifically, that it's probably a gut parasite that is preventing your fish from being able to process food properly and is killing them slowly. Look into it more. Like I said, I've never heard of it put that way, but anytime fish have pinched bellies, it's usually an issue with either infection or parasites that is causing them to not be able to either process the food they are eating, or it's basically killing them slowly by eating all the food that they are processing. So,
okay. Can fish survive in hydroponic nutrients?
Hydroponic nutrients. I'm going to say possibly, depending on what you're using. And the reason I say that is because people use tilapia, for instance, all the time in aquaponic setups. The whole idea is that the tilapia being fed food then convert or have their waste converted by the plants and ends up feeding the plants. And therefore you kind of have a full circle, right? You're feeding fish, they're crapping, feeding the plants. The plants feed you, the fish feed you, and it's all kind of a little cycle. But I don't know. There's probably all kinds of hydroponics fertilizers and stuff you could use that would kill everything other than the plants, right? Because they don't necessarily take into the fact that fish are breathing underwater, right? They respire underwater, and those chemicals could burn their gills or affect their gills negatively, which would be a problem. If it doesn't say you can do it on the label, don't do it.
Yeah. I recently introduced a blue ram, but it doesn't come to food during feeding. I think it's scared of my rainbows. Any recommendations?
Is it a single blue ram? You put one blue ram in there?
It looks like it is singular in his...
Okay, so what I usually do in these cases, if it's a very new fish, it could just take time to get comfy. And often the hungrier fish get, the more likely they are to risk things to come out and eat because they start to get desperate. But to try to not get to that point, what I would say is if you can get clear tubing and drop food down that tubing and get it towards an area where that fish hangs out while you're feeding the other fish. So you're occupying your rainbows with food on the surface, like a flake food or whatever you want, a slow sinking pellet, so that they're occupied on one end of the tank away from where that fish usually hangs out. And you can try target feeding that fish by dropping food down a tube or something like that. I use Lee's rigid tubing all the time for things like that. Or you could just give that fish a little bit more time to settle in. If it's the first week that fish is in the tank, give it a few more days, and if it's still not working, move on target feeding or something like that. You can also try adding more rams. I don't know how stocked your tank is, so I don't really want to make that recommendation, but I've always kept rams in groups of like 3 or 5, just because I feel like they're usually more comfortable when they're like that. Don't get me wrong, you can get a little bit of aggression between them, but if the tank's heavily planted or there's a lot of visual barriers, it becomes less of an issue because they'll create their own little territories. Wow, this is not very lightning. Okay, next!
All right, next. It doesn't matter. That's okay. We'll try, but when you want to give a better answer, give a better, longer answer. That's fine.
Okay.
How often do mollies breed, and which plants are best for the babies to hide in?
Oh, man.
When I got mollies, I'm going to try to sell the young.
How often? Frequently. As often as they can. So what is the gestation period of a molly? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Josh, do you happen to have any idea?
I wouldn't be surprised that if for every female that you have in there, 60 days. For every female you have in there. So if gestation is 60 days, that means from the point of copulation, 60 days later, assuming their eggs are fertile, you should have babies from each fish. So I would think that the second they are done giving birth, they are ready to get pregnant again. I don't think there's going to be much of an interval between. So I would say at most every 2 months per female. That sounds about right.
Okay. What's the best beginner fish for a 35-gallon tank? Assuming it's freshwater.
Best beginner fish for a 35-gallon tank. Livebearers. Honestly, they are hardy and pretty easy to keep. I'm a big fan of swordtails, and I think platies are pretty cool too. Guppies are also great. I find personally swordtails and platies to be a little bit hardier than guppies. Guppies aren't bad though. Like they're easy too. But those are great starter fish. Very great.
Nice. What fish can live without a heater?
Lots of fish, actually. Goldfish is a good example of fish that can live without heaters. White clouds can probably live without heaters. I don't know what the lowest temp they can take is. But they're called white cloud mountain minnows, so they come from elevation, which is usually a bit colder. What else? Zaco platypus fish like to be on the cooler side, I bet. Green bar danios like to be on the cooler side. Yeah. There's lots. Unfortunately, because we don't keep a lot of cold water fish or cool water fish in the aquatics industry, we really focus on, especially in North America, we focus on tropical fish, things that are, you know, a little bit more on the fancy side, exotic, if you will. So there isn't a ton that you'll commonly hear about, but those are a few that I know off the top of my head.
Cool. I wonder, what is old tank syndrome? Have you heard of that?
Old tank syndrome, in my opinion, is called you got lazy syndrome. So old tank syndrome is, it happens, a lot of people talk about it in reef keeping. It's basically, you've had your tank for a really long time and things are kind of declining slowly, and you can't figure out why. No matter what you do, it's not really getting any better, and you know, you've been doing the same thing for so long, but things just aren't working out the same way. Long story short, though, I think what a lot of people have come to agree is that old tank syndrome is basically, we kind of get, you know, a little complacent. We've been taking care of this tank for a long time. We know what's been working, so we maybe don't test the water as much, and we're not paying attention as much. And we're expecting to do the same thing all the time and have the exact same result, but processes in the aquarium could be changing. The bioload could be changed, especially with reef keeping. The bioload can change as corals grow and as things happen. Maybe you're not, you know, blowing off the rock with a power head the same way you used to during water changes, so you've got nutrient buildup in the tank too. And that is all just equating to what you were doing for a very long time is not producing the same result anymore. So when that kind of stuff happens, you just got to get super diligent again. You got to go in there and treat it like, you know, everything's wrong, and be super diligent with your maintenance and your cleaning, and test the bejesus out of your tank and see where your parameters are actually at, and stop assuming things. And it happens to lots of people, even this guy.
No way.
I've had old tank syndrome. And that's how I came to agree when I heard that opinion, that it's people just getting lazy. I'm like, you know what, it probably is. Probably is. It makes sense. You get used to something. You get used to having the same result by doing the same thing, and forget that aquariums are living, evolving things.
You let things start to slide a bit, then next thing you know.
Well, it worked for so long, right?
Yeah.
But things change. And like I said, aquariums evolve, especially reef tanks. Anyways, next question.
Cool. I'm a beginner trying to set up a Betta tank. I have aquarium Betta falls and need lighting. I'm looking for waterproof white LED lights. Do you know any brand or style I should get? My tank's being nasty vague.
Betta falls. Huh. So are you looking for a light to go inside the water? Is that why you want it waterproof?
Sounds like potentially.
We do. I'm pretty sure we carry a small underwater LED light. Type in underwater LED.
Underwater.
We're looking this
LED.
up. We still got some time.
All I'm seeing is underwater treasure decorations.
So maybe they are no longer available. Try accent LED.
Accent LED?
Yeah. We used to have these. We might not carry them anymore. They might not make them anymore. No, that's not going to work either. They used to make these small, like, single diode LEDs that you could put underwater to, like, create a small amount of light in an area. Some of them were color changing, so on and so forth. It doesn't look like they're available anymore, unfortunately. Other than that, just a strip light for the top. I think we have a few different small clamp-on strip lights that would work. Sephora brand has a couple, and they produce an overall white cast light. I think there are some blue diodes in there, but it's mostly white. I don't know if they're 100% waterproof, but unless you plan on dunking it in there, you shouldn't really have to worry about it.
I'm going to link you guys once again the support emails. So if you guys have questions about, you know, if you want recommendations or advice on certain types of lights, heaters, filters, any kind of product information or recommendations, obviously they can help you with that as well and point you in the right direction for anything that we do carry and anything we could provide you with. So definitely check that out. I've linked that in the chat now. You can email our support team. They're great and we love them.
They're good guys.
Okay, let's see. My Oscar fish last 1 week he's not feeding, floating pellets. Any tips? Again, I'm going to have to say email our support team with photos and some context. I'm not sure we can really tell you much about that necessarily.
Huh. So they're dying after 1 week. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think so. I have a feeling it's not eating, dies after a week, not eating floating pellets. Any tips?
Something's in the water. something can't be right if they're bombing after 1 week. Like fish take longer than 1 week to starve to death. Usually it's 14 days or better for most fish, and Oscars should not perish even after 14 days. Like they're pretty beefy fish. There you go. Yeah. Thank you, Nutty Mechanic.
Nutty Mechanic, thank you so much. Much obliged. Everyone check out his channel. Next up, how you doing? I'm in Sweden. Hey.
That's awesome.
And how about the different laws for fish keeping between here and overseas? Which is where we are. We are overseas.
Okay, so in North America, especially where I am, and I know in the U.S. it changes state to state. It can be a little bit different. But where I am, the laws are such that certain species are just straight up stricken from being kept. Snakeheads are one of them, and it's the whole shebang. All snakehead species are banned. I think the U.S. is probably similar. In the U.S., for instance, arowanas, Asian arowanas, are illegal. In Canada, they are not. That's an interesting fact. So we can have Asian arowanas, whereas in the States, you cannot have Asian arowana. Another thing about Canada, let's say, and North America, which can be for a lot of states as well, it's illegal to keep native fish or native animals in general as pets. So you're not allowed to go pull a fish out of a lake or river or whatever and then put it in an aquarium and keep it as a pet. Not even for a period of time. The only exception to that I'm aware of is keeping fish in a live well or aquarium as food fish. So it's temporary housing to keep fish alive before consumption. Right. But those fish could never go back to the wild and they have to be consumed at some point. So yeah, there's all kinds of different laws and regulations. For instance, there's all kinds of paperwork you have to go through to bring CITES animals into the country as pets. It's nuts. So I don't know what it's like in, was it Sweden?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure what your laws are like in Sweden, but I'd love to hear more about them. Because I know different places do things differently. There are places where you can go out and pick a fish out of the river and stick it in your tank, and that's totally okay. Mm-hmm. No problem. But not here. No Otherwise, I would have a brook trout tank. Yeah. Brook trout tank. Tank. Let's do this. Next question.
Setting up my first freshwater 40-gallon tank and looking at these fish. Blue angelfish, tiger plecos, pearl dwarf gourami, and cherry barbs. How many of each would be a good mix?
40-gallon.
Yep.
Ooh. I would do probably one angel. It's going to get big and mean, unfortunately. I would do a single tiger pleco too. I probably wouldn't go crazy there. You could probably do a pair. I'm assuming you meaning the small, like, they're a smaller pleco. If I had the L number, it'd probably be easier. Pearl dwarf gourami and cherry barbs. Cherry barbs, you could easily do like a group of 12. And the dwarf gourami, you could do a single one if you wanted to. You could probably do a group of 3 if they're dwarfs in a 40, but that might be pushing it, honestly. They might not like that very much. Yeah. I would personally probably try to either pick the angel or the gouramis and not do both.
Cool. No, let's see. Hi guys, I have happy news. After many problems, I got my 20-gallon long running, and my 4 bettas are divided.
Nice.
Oh, they're all divided, yeah. And it's cycling.
Okay.
My question is, what betta type is best for a low current filter?
What betta type is best for a low current filter? Like what's variant? Well, beta splendens is like the most common that we really get. And they come in all different kinds of fin shapes and colors and stuff, but they're all 6 of one, half dozen of the other. None of them are going to get angry with low flow. They're all labyrinth fish and can utilize atmospheric air if there isn't a ton of water flow. But you could also just get an air pump and drop, an air stone, a small one, in each of those 4 chambers. Just split the air pump off. It doesn't have to even be a powerful air pump, just to get some surface agitation going if you're worried about oxygen level in the tank.
Cool. Thomas, would you recommend, have you tried Twin Star? It says Twin Star from Wish.
If you're talking about that little disc that uses some form of electrolysis to clean algae and purify the water, yes, I have.
Would you recommend it?
No. I have heard and seen firsthand too many accounts of mass fish die off when using one of those units. They can be used effectively based on anecdotal evidence. Coming from, actually, there was an employee at one of our stores that tested one of these units. He put it in an aquarium, wiped out all his fish, changed the settings on it, and I think there's like a dial to increase or decrease the amount of whatever this electrolysis device is doing in the water. And they found a spot at which the fish did not die, and they seemed to have an improvement on the amount of algae in the tank. But you'd have to make sure that's the only thing you change. Like, I'm not buying it yet. I don't trust it. Not to, like, I could have just bad experiences being whispered in my ear, but I don't trust it. I wouldn't use it. That's just me. Sorry, Twin Star. Change my mind, I dare you.
I like that. Change my mind.
Yeah, Twin Star, change my mind.
Yeah. I dig it. How are we doing for time?
It's we're past by 5, but we could do another 5.
Another 5. All right, let's see here. Can a Betta be in a 3.5 gallon tank, or should I buy a bigger tank?
A single male in a 3.5 is doable. I would go for a 5 gallon. I think it would be better all around. 10 gallon would be even sweeter.
Awesome. Let's see here. We've got these cool people chatting it up in...
That's awesome. I'm glad that we're a space for people to just kind of have a good time.
Heck yeah. Been doing a fishless cycle with ammonia, and it seems to be complete. Is there any way to know what type of fish load that 1 drop of ammonia per gallon would equal? For example, how much fish can I start off with right away? I don't want to add too few fish and not be taking advantage of the full bio load that I've cycled.
Here's the thing. Bacteria aren't just going to like die instantly because there's no food. It takes a little bit of time. So you can still stock sparingly and just do it week over week. So, or honestly, if it's already cycled, what I would do is go to your fish store, pick up a few fish, give it a few days, test your water. You should still see that nitrate either increasing or holding steady, but you should see 0 ammonia. Things are good after a few days. Go back and get a few more fish. Keep doing that, nice and slow, and you shouldn't push that bio load past its tipping point. You should be okay. It's like, even when you're doing a cycle with fish, they usually say, put a couple fish in, give it a couple weeks, put a couple fish in, give it a couple weeks, or a few fish in. You're doing it slowly, pushing that boundary a little bit at a time. As long as you're testing, you can do the exact same thing, just a little bit faster. So 3 or 4 days, add a few more fish. 3 or 4 days, add a few more fish.
Awesome. I have a 29 gallon tall, and I want to get some Bosemani rainbow fish. How many could I put in?
Bosemani rainbow 29. Honestly, they like space and they swim around a lot. I'm going to say you should probably do dwarf neon rainbows. Because you can put a decent school of them. You could probably put 5 or 6 in and they have real good time. Bosemanis get pretty big. So I wouldn't want to cramp them. 1. Or a bunch of dwarf neons.
Cool. We're going to do one more question, guys, but first I just want to quickly say, number one, thank you for joining us. For those of you who join us every single week, we love seeing you here. We love answering your questions. Thank you for being here every single week. For those of you who are new, make sure to check us out every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do these every week. So again, thank you guys for being here. The best way to support us, apart from actually watching our videos and joining in, best way to support us is to check out bighousepets.com. If you live in Canada near one of our stores, go check out one of our stores. We'd love to have you there. Or if you're in Canada and not near one of our stores, check out bighousepets.ca. That's one of the best ways to support us and make sure we can keep bringing you this video content. With that said, thank you to Thomas for showing up today to my house. I love having you here.
I like coming.
Yeah. And then I guess we'll move on to the last question. I added my first 2 fish to my very first saltwater aquarium, and one got ick and died. Is my tank now infested? Any recommendations on what to do now? Oh, man.
Okay, so here's the thing. You pretty much always have a chance of getting ick. Your tank isn't like infected with ick now. So Ick is a parasite that will prey on fish that have a weakened immune system. Ick won't usually show up in fish that are healthy. They fight it off naturally. In the same way that if we are healthy, we tend not to get sick either. That being said, if your other clownfish doesn't yet have ick, and it's been a while and it hasn't gotten ick yet, it probably won't get ick. What I will recommend is not putting any new fish in the aquarium for a little while. Just make sure everything settles out. I think ick life cycle in total is, basically I think after 1 month, you should be in the clear. And in which case adding more fish, they are unlikely to get ick as long as they are healthy. So yeah, you don't need to worry like your tank is now going to kill every single fish you put in it. It's not going to happen. Not unless you do something horribly wrong. But yeah, I'm sorry you lost your fish to ick. That really sucks. There was probably something already not well with that clownfish, and the whole act of moving it to a new space pushed it past the edge, and it contracted ick, and it didn't make it. Ick is usually something that happens afterwards. So it's I look at ick as more of a symptom of something greater. Something else happened that made your fish susceptible to getting ick. And clownfish don't very easily get ick. So yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up another live Q&A. Thank you guys all so much. Yes, Madeline, thank you. Only 50 likes. Come on, people. Make sure you hit the like button next time you guys are here with us as well. Make sure you hit that like button. Share our channel around anywhere you can. Because again, the more people that see us and subscribe, the more content we can bring you. The more awesome video series and tips and tricks and live streams and all that fun. So all that said, guys, thanks again. Have a good day. And well, as always,
keep on tanking.